They did not fear us at first. Why would they? Humanity was, by all measures, small, fragile bodies, short lifespans, a single-planet species tucked away at the edge of a quiet arm of the galaxy. To the elder civilizations, we were nothing, not dangerous, not threatening, not even worthy of consideration. They judged us by their logic. In their eyes, survival required order. Civilizations lasted because of structure, obedience, predictability. Empires were built like machines, each cog, each gear in perfect motion. That was how the universe worked, they believed. And in that view, humans were an anomaly, a flicker of chaos in an otherwise orderly galaxy. They were not wrong. From the first moment humanity stepped into the stars, the galaxy realized something was different. Other species expanded slowly, cautiously, carefully mapping the dangers of the void. Humans, we leapt, we gambled. We threw ourselves into the abyss with ships held together by ambition and duct tape. Where other species waited for centuries to test their technology, we launched ourselves to Mars, then Jupiter, then beyond. We failed more often than we succeeded. Ships exploded, colonies collapsed, thousands died, and yet we did not stop. We never stopped. That was the first sign. The second came in war. The first time an alien fleet engaged humans, they expected surrender. They saw inferior ships, weaker weapons, underdeveloped tactics. To them, the fight should have been over before it began. And in truth, it should have. Humanity was outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched. But instead of breaking, humans adapted. They turned chaos into strategy. Fighters broke formation, acting independently, unpredictably. Frigates sacrificed themselves to cripple enemy flagships. Soldiers on the ground used terrain not as defense, but as a trap, turning every hill, every alley, every broken wall into an ambush point. Nothing the humans did made sense by galactic standards. But that was the problem. Against chaos, order falters. The alien fleet's perfect formations collapsed under the weight of unpredictability. Their commanders, used to disciplined, logical opponents, could not react fast enough to madness. Humanity should have lost. Instead, humanity survived. Barely. Bloodied. Scarred. But alive. The galaxy's first lesson was simple. Humans are chaos incarnate, and the universe did not know how to handle it. For chaos does not follow rules. It does not bend to order. It cannot be predicted, and it cannot be contained. Chaos spreads. It consumes. And in the hands of humanity, chaos was not a weakness. It was a weapon. Because where other species saw the impossible, humans saw opportunity. Where others saw death, humans saw meaning. Where others saw the end, humans saw a beginning. We gamble, we risk, we fall, and we rise again. And in a universe that demands order, that very chaos made us the most dangerous species of all. They thought we were fragile. They thought we were insignificant. They thought we were just another primitive race destined to burn out. They were wrong, and soon the galaxy would learn just how wrong. The second lesson came faster than anyone expected. When the Federation of Xylar sent its fleets to pacify Earth, they expected a swift and decisive victory. Their ships were masterpieces of order, sleek formations, flawless coordination, algorithms running thousands of calculations per second. Against them, humanity fielded patched-together warships, experimental weapons, and untested strategies. The battle should have been one-sided. But the Federation quickly learned that humans did not fight wars the way anyone else did. When their dreadnoughts advanced, humanity did not meet them head-on with equal power. Instead, human fleets fractured into dozens of small groups, scattering in every direction. The aliens called it cowardice at first, believing the humans were fleeing. But then the chaos unfolded. Tiny corvettes looped behind dreadnoughts, slipping through blind spots. Frigates crashed directly into enemy shields, detonating nuclear warheads at point-blank range. Fighter wings split and reformed in seconds, flying suicidal patterns that defied logic but forced the enemy into confusion. In one infamous moment, a human destroyer disabled its own engines and drifted cold into the middle of the enemy fleet, pretending to be wreckage. When the aliens ignored it, the destroyer reactivated, unleashing a barrage from inside their formation before self-destructing. That was when the Federation realized what it was truly facing. Humans did not fight to preserve order. They fought to win, no matter the cost. They fought with desperation, creativity, and madness. They bent rules until they broke, then fought in the broken pieces. They gambled lives for opportunities that no other species would dare to risk. The Federation won that battle, but at a cost so staggering their victory felt like defeat. Hundreds of their ships were gone. Thousands of their soldiers were dead, and all because humanity refused to play by the rules of war. Word spread across the galaxy. At first, other civilizations scoffed. They said the Federation commanders had been incompetent, the humans lucky. But then came the next war, and the next, and every time the story was the same. Humans were unpredictable. They attacked when retreat made sense. They retreated when they seemed to have the upper hand. They sabotaged their own ships to use them as weapons. They sent false signals, lured fleets into ambushes, pretended to surrender only to strike in the middle of negotiations. No pattern could ever be found. To fight humans was to descend into chaos, and chaos spread. Alien soldiers who faced humans returned broken, not because they lost battles, but because they could not understand them. They reported soldiers charging into gunfire with nothing but knives. They described squads who fought for hours even after losing half their number. They told stories of men and women who, when captured, provoked their captors into making mistakes, turning their own imprisonment into a weapon. The galaxy, which had always prized stability, began to whisper that humans were dangerous, not because of their weapons, but because of their minds, their unpredictability, their refusal to break. One scientist from the Veilon Collective famously wrote, "The human species embodies entropy. Where other species seek balance, they seek disruption. Where we find safety in patterns, they thrive in breaking them. They are chaos in its purest form, and chaos is the one element the universe cannot prepare for." That analysis spread like wildfire, and with it, so did fear. Because order can prepare for strength. It can prepare for intelligence. It can even prepare for cunning. But it cannot prepare for madness. And that was what humanity brought to the stars. Madness disguised as courage. Chaos disguised as survival. Unpredictability disguised as strategy. The Federation learned this the hard way. Within a decade of their first clash with humanity, their fleets refused to enter human space. Commanders stalled. Soldiers deserted. Captains feigned engine malfunctions just to avoid orders. The galaxy began to ask a terrifying question. If humans could do this while still primitive, still fragile, still learning, what would they become when they truly mastered the stars? The third lesson came not from the battlefield, but from the aftermath. The Federation believed chaos was temporary, that eventually humanity's reckless tactics would collapse under their own weight, that no species could survive by throwing themselves into fire over and over again. They thought the human way of war was unsustainable, and yet humanity thrived. The galaxy began documenting incidents, each one more unbelievable than the last. The siege of Carthos was one such story. A single human battalion was surrounded in the ruins of a colony city, cut off from supplies and support. The alien commander gave them 3 hours to surrender, believing starvation and exhaustion would make resistance impossible. Instead, the humans responded with laughter. For 7 days, they held out, not by defending passively, but by launching constant raids against their besiegers. At night, they slipped through sewer systems and struck supply lines. By day, they used ruined skyscrapers to stage sniper ambushes. They sabotaged enemy artillery, stole food from alien camps, and even broadcast false signals that made the attackers believe reinforcements were arriving. When the siege finally ended, it was not because the humans surrendered. It was because the alien commander pulled his forces back in humiliation, having lost nearly a third of his army to what was supposed to be an easy containment. The report from that battle spread like poison through the Federation's ranks. How could one battalion humiliate an entire division? The answer was simple: chaos. Humans thrived in disorder. While alien armies struggled without clear supply chains and perfect formations, humans turned rubble into fortresses and hunger into motivation. They adapted, improvised, and kept fighting long after they should have been broken. Another legend came from the oceans of Vera Prime. Human marines, outnumbered and outgunned, retreated into the storm-tossed seas. The aliens thought them finished, but the humans used the violent weather as cover, launching raids from beneath the waves, emerging in the chaos of lightning and thunder like phantoms. The aliens never knew when or where they would strike next. By the time the storm cleared, the alien fleet had retreated, unwilling to risk more losses to the seaborne demons of Earth. These stories grew in number until they became something greater than tales of war. They became myths. To human ears, they were legends of resilience. To alien ears, they were nightmares. And every time humanity clashed with the galaxy, those myths multiplied. The Battle of Orion's Gate was perhaps the most infamous. A choke point guarded by a massive alien fleet, it was considered impenetrable. Any attempt to breach it would require numbers humanity did not have. So they did not try to breach it. They collapsed it. A small human task force lured the alien fleet into pursuing them deep into the gate's gravitational corridor. Once the aliens committed their ships, the humans detonated asteroids rigged with nuclear devices, destabilizing the corridor itself. The entire battlefield became a maelstrom of collapsing gravity wells. Hundreds of alien ships were torn apart by the forces of their own trap. The humans barely escaped, losing almost every ship in the process. But the gate was destroyed, a strategic stronghold, an ancient symbol of the Federation's power, gone in one reckless act of defiance. That was when the galaxy began to understand. Humans did not fight to preserve themselves. They fought to win, even if winning meant burning everything around them. They did not fear death. They did not fear loss. They feared only one thing, surrender, and that terrified the galaxy. Other species began to whisper names for humanity. The children of chaos, the reckless ones, the fireborn. Each name carried the same meaning. A people who could not be controlled, who could not be predicted, who could not be broken. The Federation issued warnings to its troops. Do not underestimate humans. Do not assume surrender. Do not assume logic will guide their actions. But it was too late. Chaos had spread. Humanity's legend was growing, and the galaxy, for all its order, could not handle it. The Federation thought they could adapt. After all, they had survived countless wars, rebellions, and uprisings. They had crushed entire civilizations before, stamping out resistance with overwhelming force. But humanity was different. For every strategy the Federation developed, humans responded with something unexpected. When the Federation tried to smother human colonies with blockades, humans developed smuggling networks so complex, even the best scanners could not trace them. When the Federation deployed massive, heavily armed warships, humans countered with swarms of small, fast attack craft that darted in like insects, striking weak points and vanishing before retaliation. The galaxy watched as human unpredictability shattered the illusions of control. At first, the Federation dismissed humanity's victories as luck, as anomalies, but luck could not explain the pattern. Luck could not explain why humans survived battles they should not, why human soldiers rallied when logic dictated retreat, why human captains laughed in the face of overwhelming odds and still found ways to win. The truth was darker, and it spread like wildfire. Humans thrived in chaos because chaos was their nature. One alien historian wrote, "Humans are not anomalies. They are inevitabilities. Where others build walls, they tear them down. Where others seek order, they create storms. To fight them is to drown in unpredictability." The universe began to fracture under this realization. Empires that once believed in absolute control faced doubt. Could they withstand humanity's way of war? Could they survive a species that refused to play by the rules? The story of the Karith Dominion answered that question. The Karith were an ancient empire, their fleets numbering in the thousands, their armies seasoned by centuries of conquest. When humans expanded into their border systems, the Karith responded with overwhelming force, confident they would make an example of this upstart species. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare. Human guerrilla fighters turned the Dominion's strength into weakness. Every fleet movement was harassed by hit-and-run strikes. Every occupation was poisoned by sabotage. The more the Carith pressed, the deeper the humans pulled them into the quagmire. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Verdanis. The Carith deployed their full armada, determined to crush humanity once and for all. But the humans did not meet them in open battle. Instead, they scattered into dozens of smaller groups, each launching attacks across multiple systems at once. The Carith found themselves chasing shadows, dividing their forces until they were vulnerable. Then, like wolves, the humans struck. By the end of the campaign, the Carith armada was shattered, its empire collapsing under the weight of chaos. And the galaxy learned something horrifying. Not only could humanity survive against overwhelming odds, they could dismantle empires built over millennia. From that day forward, alien commanders spoke a single warning before any campaign against Earth. Do not corner them. Do not push them into desperation. For humans fight hardest when they have nothing left to lose. But the truth was worse. Humans fought hardest not just when they were desperate, but when they were winning. The Federation realized this during the Second Expansion Wars. Humanity had gained allies, species once oppressed by the Federation, inspired by humanity's defiance. These smaller civilizations had seen the chaos not as madness, but as hope, and so chaos spread. It was no longer just humans disrupting order. It was humans teaching others to fight without rules, to abandon rigid formations, to embrace unpredictability. Armies that had once bowed to order now fought with the same reckless spirit as their human allies. The Federation's nightmare had multiplied. What terrified them most was not humanity's weapons, nor their technology, nor even their numbers. It was their philosophy. Humanity's refusal to yield, their ability to turn every disaster into opportunity, their audacity to laugh in the face of annihilation. These traits infected the galaxy like a virus. Planets that had once been docile now dreamed of rebellion. Soldiers that had once obeyed without question now asked, if humans can defy the Federation, why cannot we? The galaxy had lived in order for too long, and now humanity had shown them the power of chaos. The Federation tried to erase these stories. They banned the retelling of human victories, silenced historians, and censored battlefield reports. But chaos cannot be contained. Smugglers spread the tales. Refugees whispered them. Even alien soldiers carried the legends home. Unable to forget the sight of human warriors charging through fire, screaming defiance even as they fell, the galaxy was changing, and deep down, every empire, every Federation Council member, every alien commander feared the same truth. Humanity was not going to stop. They were not anomalies. They were storms, and storms could not be reasoned with. The turning point was not a single battle. It was not a war won by brute force, nor a decisive strike that shattered an empire. No, the turning point was psychological. The galaxy began to see humans differently. It started in whispers, carried by survivors of battles that should have been one-sided. Captains who had fled in disgrace, soldiers who had been spared because humans were too busy fighting another threat, civilians who had watched human fleets vanish into the void after impossible victories. These whispers spread like contagion. They do not fight like us. They do not stop like us. They should not have survived, but they did. Fear began to fester in the Federation's ranks. Veterans refused deployments near human borders. Commanders hesitated before ordering offensives, haunted by stories of fleets swallowed by guerrilla ambushes or annihilated by desperate last stands. Even the most disciplined soldiers began to crack under the weight of what humanity represented: unpredictability. For centuries, alien civilizations had been conditioned to trust order. Victory came from precision, hierarchy, and discipline. But humans broke those chains. Humans thrived in chaos because they were chaos. One alien scholar famously wrote, "Humans are not warriors. They are storms made flesh. To fight them is not to fight an army. It is to fight inevitability itself." The Federation tried to bury such words. They outlawed discussions of human victories, branding them as exaggerations or myths. But the more they tried to suppress the legends, the stronger they became. The story of the siege of Thalros was retold in hidden cantinas and across encrypted networks. A human garrison of barely 10,000 soldiers had held out against an entire fleet for months, not by brute strength, but by sheer unpredictability. Traps that detonated at random intervals, raids launched in the middle of enemy planning cycles, counterattacks that came from impossible angles. When the Thalros fleet finally broke through, they found the human defenders dead, not from surrender, but because they had chosen to detonate their own base rather than allow capture. That single story spread like wildfire, not because of victory, but because of defiance. What terrified the galaxy most was not that humans could win. It was that humans did not fear losing. They did not fear death. And in war, there is no weapon more dangerous than a soldier who does not cling to survival. The galaxy's rulers met in secret, debating what to do with this growing threat. Some argued for extermination, strike Earth before it was too late, wipe humanity from the stars. But others shook with dread. If a species embraced chaos so fully, would genocide not make them martyrs? Would their death not spark rebellion across the galaxy? For the first time in centuries, the Federation wavered, but humanity did not wait. They pushed outward. Colonies spread into hostile space, settlers carving out homes where no one else dared to live. Soldiers volunteered for hopeless missions with smiles on their faces. Captains led fleets into enemy territory not for conquest, but simply to show the galaxy that no barrier could contain them. It was reckless. It was insane, and it worked. Alien leaders watched helplessly as their people began to idolize humanity. Rebel movements adopted human tactics. Discontent soldiers carried human slogans into battle. Entire populations rose up, declaring that if humans could fight the Federation, so could they. The galaxy was unraveling, not because humans had destroyed it with force, but because humans had destroyed its illusion of control. The Federation grew desperate. They unleashed superweapons meant to terrify humanity into submission. Planetary bombardments reduced entire colonies to ash. Biological plagues were engineered to target human DNA. Psychological warfare campaigns broadcast despair across the stars, and yet, even in the face of annihilation, humanity endured. A colony bombarded into ruins sent out a final message before being silenced forever. We are still here. That transmission was intercepted across dozens of systems. It became a rallying cry for resistance movements galaxy-wide. A plague meant to wipe out Earth instead backfired because humans adapted. They found cures faster than expected, weaponized immunity, and turned the Federation's own weapon into another story of resilience. Every attempt to crush humanity became a story. Every atrocity turned into legend. And every legend fueled the chaos further. What the Federation could not understand, what they could never adapt to, was that humans did not just survive chaos. They became it. They wielded it. And they spread it like wildfire until no empire could control the flames. The final crack came when Federation commanders began refusing orders. Too many had seen human defiance firsthand. Too many had lost fleets, planets, and soldiers to battles that logic said should have been easy. Some resigned in shame, others defected, and some whispered treason. Perhaps order is the lie. Perhaps chaos is the truth. Humanity had not only fought their enemies, they had infected them. By the time the Federation realized it, it was already too late. The galaxy was no longer theirs to control. It belonged to the storm, and at the heart of that storm were humans. In the end, the galaxy did not fall to a superweapon. It did not collapse beneath the weight of a grand strategy or a flawless plan. No, the galaxy fell to something it could not contain: humanity's chaos. The Federation Council chambers once echoed with certainty. Every decision was calculated, every outcome predicted. They believed themselves eternal. But now those halls stood in silence, their leaders staring at fractured star maps, watching as rebellion spread like cracks in glass. The final straw came when a Federation general, once hailed as a symbol of order, defected to humanity's side. When asked why, his words were broadcast across every system. "I would rather stand with chaos than die for a lie." That was the death knell. Entire fleets mutinied. Colonies rose in defiance. The Federation, once a monolith, dissolved into fragments. And at the center of it all, humanity advanced, not as conquerors, but as proof that the galaxy's greatest truth was not order, but survival in chaos. What terrified the survivors was not just the collapse of the Federation. It was the realization that humanity had never intended to destroy them. Humans had simply refused to be contained. Every strike, every rebellion, every impossible victory was not born from conquest, it was born from instinct. Humanity did not seek to rule. They sought to endure, and in enduring, they broke the chains of a galaxy that had grown complacent. Stories became scripture. Across distant stars, civilizations told their children of human soldiers who charged through fire, laughing as death closed in. They spoke of captains who led fleets into the void without hesitation, knowing they might never return. They whispered of colonies that burned rather than kneel, their ashes becoming the foundation of rebellion. And above all, they spoke of one undeniable truth. Humans did not fear death. The galaxy had built its empires on that fear. Obedience was maintained by reminding the weak of mortality, by convincing them that survival required submission. But humanity tore that illusion apart. When faced with annihilation, humans did not beg, did not bow, did not surrender. They embraced death as part of life. And in doing so, they broke the very foundation of galactic control. To the galaxy, this was not bravery. It was madness. And yet it was madness that worked. The final battles of the Federation were not recorded in detail. No one remembers the strategies, the formations, or the casualties. What they remember is the sight of human soldiers marching side by side with alien rebels, not as allies of convenience, but as kindred spirits bound by chaos. They remember the screams of defiance echoing across burning worlds. They remember the moment when entire populations refused to kneel, inspired by a single thought. If humans do not fear death, why should we? That question reshaped the galaxy. Centuries later, long after the Federation's ruins had been swallowed by time, the legends endured. Scholars debated whether humanity was blessed or cursed. Philosophers argued whether chaos was freedom or destruction. Soldiers studied human tactics not to replicate them, but to prepare themselves in case humanity ever turned its storm upon them. But one truth was never denied. Humanity had proven that the universe could not handle them. The final words of the Chronicle, etched into archives across 100 species, were simple yet terrifying. Humans are chaos incarnate. They do not fear death, and that is why they will never be defeated. The galaxy would never forget, because once chaos is unleashed, it cannot be caged, and humanity was chaos given form.